Welcome back to the Budding Author Podcast with me, your host, Simon Ward. Today, we're talking to a retired detective. We are talking to Simon Dinsdale. Welcome to the show, Simon.
Thank you, Simon. We'll have to sort this out.
We'll have to sort the Simons out, won't we?
Simon, yeah.
Quite often, when people start writing, they're advised to write about what you know. And for you, that perfectly steps right in, doesn't it? Retired detective, seen some things over the years. Are they working their way into your books?
I'm trying very hard to make sure that they don't. Not the real stuff, anyway. I mean, obviously, what I saw and dealt with inspires my writing. It doesn't hurt, of course, that I'm a huge fan of crime fiction anyway. And that was always what I wanted to write. I've been wanting to write for many years, but I've been inspired by a few people and a couple of instances that have happened over the years, but I go quite a long way to disguise them.
That's right. You can't make it too obvious, can you? No.
I'd rather not, because of course you can't write about real life in fiction, I don't think, because actually real life policing in fiction wouldn't work because it's boring. There's too much paperwork. But also, so I dealt with some pretty unpleasant things, and of course that affects people's lives, and there are victims, and I don't want to be, sort of trying to profit, if you like, on a victim's back. I wouldn't do that. So
no, that makes good sense. But I think the experience that you've gained sort of fills you full of lots of ideas and scenarios around that same area.
Yes, it does, and I write. I suppose you describe my books as police procedurals, and in order to get that level of authenticity, if you like, then of course my background gives me I can write with some authority about that, and I hope I've done that.
I see things like CSI and that sort of stuff. Do you laugh at those? Or are they quite a good representation?
I mean, the CSI franchise in America, for example, I think they're superb. I mean, how people can think up all those different scenarios. I mean, they do 20-something episode runs, and then you've got it all over the United States. Brilliant. Having said that, almost all the science that they portray is real.
Yeah.
What isn't real, of course, is the fact that you have one super scientist who can do every single discipline. And it takes 15 seconds to do on a computer, or 40 minutes. Of course, that's the requirement for a television drama, with all of the plot points and turns and twists and whatnot that they require. But essentially, what they are portraying is real science. It all really exists. It just can't be done as quickly as they do on the telly.
Well, that's it. I think you want to. When you've got people watching that, you want them to know that they're not going to get away with anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. It's if you leave it's very difficult not to leave a piece of evidence of you being in a scene these days, because the likes of DNA or forensic science is almost down to a subatomic level. So it's very difficult not to leave some sort of trace of you behind, as it were. So, and that of course makes it more difficult to write a 90,000-word novel, because if you know that they could catch them with a bit of skin tissue after 10 minutes, how are you going to drag that out?
I think sometimes you have to sort of go back to the Holmes kind of era to
there's a whole sort of explosion in the last couple of years of historical crime fiction, isn't there? Which takes it back to the early 20th century, or even as far back as the Tudors.
I was going to say futuristic crime drama would be quite short-lived, I would think. There's a camera on everybody, and everybody can be picked up. So
potentially, certainly, yeah. I mean, if even today, if you present, even in my day, I mean, I retired in 2010, but in the years before that, if I went to the courts and without a bit of CCTV. As far as lawyers were concerned, well, there couldn't have been a crime if there wasn't a CCTV image, and that was then. Lord knows what it's like
amazing how
now.
Quickly it changes, isn't it?
Yeah.
So So what inspired you to actually start writing? Was this sort of like a retirement job sort of thing for you, or was you writing way before?
Well, I've wanted to write. I've had that sort of urge for many years, it has to be said, but I was so busy. I tried to sit down on a number of occasions. I did the classic OU creative writing course, but I really never had the time. I had a young family, and then, of course, I progressed up through the ranks in the police service, and you end up with, in fact, there's very little time to sit down and actually, because as you know as well as I do, you've got to concentrate to write, and if you've got other things like kids in one ear and the telephone ringing constantly to call you out to go to another murder or something, it becomes very difficult to get a good line. So I had, by the time I'd retired, I had a character, and I had the first, certainly the first, or what turned out into be the first two books already in my head. They were ready to go. In fact, I had the plot for the first book probably about 25 years ago, and I had that swilling, so I knew what that was going to be, and that's where I started from, that, and it expanded from that. So I was ready to go, and I'd wanted to do it for a long time. I had offers of work when I retired, and I had to have an operation on my knee, which needed doing. So I had to turn around and turn down two pieces of work, and I was rather pleased that I did, actually, because it meant that I was sitting here with my leg up in the air, and I could start to write, and I haven't stopped. And I didn't need to work, thankfully. I was well sort of set to the point that I could retire. I was lucky enough to be able to cover my bills without getting out of bed in the morning. That was so I had that cushion, which of course, huge numbers of other writers don't have that. Don't have that luxury. I do work, but in other areas. But it meant that I could get away from the umbrella, if you like, of the police service.
Yeah, I think it was a bit similar for me, really. I've sort of worked as a contractor and consultant, and I'm sort of reducing my time now. I still do work occasionally, but the writing, of course, more than fills my day with other things I do. So I'm one of those now. And a classic retirement line is, "I don't know how I found time to go to work."
Oh yeah. Well, there's that, of course. Yeah. But
building a family and looking after the family and that sort of stuff does leave only small amount of time for writing. So I think it is sort of similar to yourself, Simon, that when that time frees up, that's a good time to sort of dive into writing in a bigger sense, as it were.
On a full-time basis. Yeah. You have to have, as you have to have the silence, you have to have the time to be able to think. It's astonishing the amount of time I spend thinking. My wife is always, you thinking again. She's not heard.
How dare you will do all that thinking time.
But it gives you that time and a bit of space. I've got a sort of comfortable room that I can use as my office. It's a good base to write. I'm not one of those who can write on a laptop at Heathrow Departure Lounge. I can't do that. I need to be difficult. But it's So I write every day. If I'm not, because the other sort of area I work in is I do a lot of talking about my experiences, about what I was in the police service. I work on the ships. I'm a lecturer on the ships, cruise ships. So I get lots of time spent on cruise ships doing talking and telling stories.
So that does lend itself very well to book promotions and book clubs and that sort of thing, going and presenting your books. Have you done much of that, Simon?
No, I haven't. I'm so new to this, to the actual point of having something to promote, that I'm playing a bit of catch up. I'm contacting book clubs. I'm going all the way to Devon in June for my first book club. I'm desperately trying to find others who might be interested, who I could go and visit, and I'm contacting all these people. But it doesn't happen in 5 minutes, does it? You see, these people are always these marvelous book clubs are always booked up for a year in advance. So I'm playing a little bit. I'm a bit of catch up, but making contact with people like you is a good way of it all helps.
Of course, yeah. The libraries is from some of the other interviews I've done on the channel, which they're part of the reason for starting the channel was I needed to increase my knowledge and my network.
Yeah.
But some of the great tips I've picked up from the other people I've been talking to has really sort of projected me forward, both with my my sort of focus on social media and my sort of mindset for sort of going forward. It's typical of a writer to not be interested in the marketing side of it, but of course, we all want to just write our stories. We all want to just write our stories, but if nobody knows they're about, then you're wasting your time. So one of the suggestions was libraries.
Right.
I did have a stop-start book writing sort of speech sort of thing at a library, but it came at the end of what was supposed to be a sort of a coffee morning.
Yeah.
But the morning of the coffee morning, the heavens opened and nobody went to the coffee morning. So I only had like 5 people turn up, and I think some of those were just getting out of the rain. So it was a bit of a damp squib, as it were. But I'm in discussions with libraries now, and I'm rather than just talking to one specific library, I'm talking to a suite of them, and there's something coming up around June time where I'll sort of have like a tour of the libraries to do that. A friend of mine suggested the libraries, people lend books from libraries, they don't buy them, but I mean actually people do. So get the hand on it and that sort of thing. So that's part of my route. On you say you're writing every day. Are you doing your own editing, or have you outsourced your editing?
I have an editor. I've had to, because you reach the point where you realise that I use a writing aid, an editing aid, which gets me to a particular point. Pardon?
Is that Pro Writing Aid?
Pro Writing Aid, yeah, which was
I use that as well, yeah.
Transformational for me, because you suddenly realise that you realise that you're being rejected because you've written the same 7-word sentence 3 times in subsequent paragraphs, and you don't see it with your eyes.
Overused words. That's it, yeah.
But once I'd got the publishing contract, I've engaged an editor. In fact, my 3rd book I'm just waiting for the copy edits to come back from the editor.
Yeah.
That falls on me as the author, and I think it's becoming more normal for authors to have to do that. I've always known you cannot publish a book that hasn't been professionally edited because it shows up within a nanosecond. So yes, I've employed an editor, and we've been working together for a couple of years now, and she's edited all my books.
Do you still put it through Pro Writing Aid before it goes to the editor? Yeah.
Well, I put it. I bung that through, so I make sure that I'm giving her something that's not going to make her want to gouge her own eyes out. I want to give her something that's useful, so at least she can then work on it. And she, even having been through Pro Writing Aid, she still comes back with some pretty useful comments in terms of the structure. That's the thing. It's the structure and the way that you lay it out. You've got to make sure that's right. It looks so much more professional.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're cutting your own legs off.
You're published with Sharp Books, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do they supply the editor, or you have to pay for the editor separately?
No, the editing is down to me.
Okay.
So and as I say, that seems to be. I've spoken to a number of other people in my position in the early stages, and unless you go through one of the big houses that have in-house editing, and I think even a lot of them, from what I've been told, the editing is becoming more and more farmed out, and the cost of which is falling back to the author. The emphasis, I suppose, is that the author should be presenting a marketable piece of work. So, it's
so
all cost.
as far as cover design, is that something that you're working with, or?
Sharp did that, and I've got quite pleased with it. Actually, they did it for both my books.
Dark Shadow is the one.
Dark Shadow, yeah. So that was quite a good cover. I was very pleased when I saw that. It's quite, it's a nice moment when you see a professionally prepared cover. So yes, they do that. They do a certain amount of promotion and marketing, but I have to work quite closely with them in order to do that. Quite rightly, I suppose. I've got to they've got lots of other authors as well. I've got to at least do my bit, get my own voice about, my face about.
So the editing side of it, does that sort of, because you've always got a profit and loss situation, haven't you, when you're spooning out for a lot of editing?
Yeah.
Have you reached the point yet where you break even, or not quite?
Well, no, because I was only published in November.
Okay, yes, it's 30 days then.
The first two books came out together, so it's very early days. I know I'm selling because I'm buying lots of them, but and lots of I know. In fact, I was out last night and signed. A friend of mine appeared and said, "Sign these for me," which was very nice. And they purchased two books. So I know I am selling, but it's I'm not a long way from being a bestseller. So you need to keep going.
It's a tough game to get the engagement. A Sharp Book's doing a lot for getting you into sort of the Waterstones and that kind of thing.
No, I don't. They're not doing any of that at all. They are primarily an ebook publisher, and of course it comes along on print on demand. But they don't. I mean, I'm contacting bookshops, see whether or not they would take a couple of copies of mine, particularly locally. But again, that's very difficult. They've only got so much space, and I'm sure they've got dozens of other local authors who are coming along and saying, "Would you mind putting my books up?" But I'll keep going. So it's and of course as I understand it, most of the big Waterstones and the big bookshops, for example, are part of the big publishing houses, aren't they? So they tend to take the books from their sponsors, as it were. I think, as I understand
it. It's similar with libraries as well. Libraries sort of got set people that they buy the books from.
Yeah.
So they don't always buy from independents, as it were.
No, I don't. I think if a library ticket holder goes in and says, "Can I read this? Can you get this book for me?" They will get it.
Yeah.
And I know at least two people have ordered my book through libraries, and they were told, "Yes, we'll get that for you, no problem at all." So I know that my book, certainly at least one of them, is in at least two libraries and is available for lending. So, but it doesn't come automatically, as it were. It won't be supplied from the publisher.
No, I think it's one of those, really. I think from my point of view, I want people to read my stuff. It's not so much about them making money doing it. I don't particularly want to lose money doing it, but I just want to get my stories out there. I've had a good reaction to my books, so I just want to sort of get them out there and
and that's exactly that's the experiences that I've been getting. We've invested a great deal of time and energy in producing these books, and of course, we want to get them out. We want people to read them. If someone is going to pay me a lot of money, that will be a very nice result, and I certainly wouldn't turn it away. But it isn't my primary objective. My primary objective was to get published by an established publishing house, to have an established publishing contract, which I've got. And the other thing which I saw as being a sort of mark of success, if you like, or having achieved my objective was to be accepted into the Crime Writers Association, which I had been. So that's terrific. So anything that comes after that is vanilla, to be honest.
But that's it. You're flying. You're flying, aren't you?
I just need to sell 4,000 books.
Yeah, I'm not up to the 4,000 either myself yet. Nowhere near. So, how does your partner? Is your partner sort of, does she check your books and that sort of stuff? Do they support you, or is it sort of like?
Yeah, she reads them and tells me where. Not, she doesn't actually. I mean, to be honest with you, she's not a huge fan of crime fiction. That's not really her interesting stuff. She likes books in other genres, but she has read my books. And she will always take one of my books with her when we go away. She will read it, and then she will leave it in the hotel or the ship library before we leave, just so that it's there's one. So she does. That's her. That's a clever idea.
That's a good one. As far as your writing process, obviously, as you said, you got it in your head for the first one. How long did it take you to write your first draft? And what was your style for writing your first draft?
Well, my style. Go on. Sorry.
Because there's the term pantser and planner. Plotzer and pantser. Yeah.
I'm completely disorganized. I suppose the pantser originally was disorganized, wasn't it? I saw a marvelous something on Twitter recently. A marvelous a young author has got all these different coloured cards, and she writes all because she is a planner. So she was planning this and planning that and planning that, and I'm thinking, God, I don't do that. I basically I have the kernel, I have the basic plot, and then I just let it go. And I read a very good book by Stephen King many years ago, and I'm sure you know what I'm going to say. He said, "Don't muck about, write the whole thing, and then go back and start working on it." But when you're writing, don't just go and write tap until you've completed the first draft. Then go back and start polishing and work. And that's really what I do. I have a clear idea about the scenes or where this particular chapter is coming from and where it needs to get to in my head, in my mind's eye, and then I can visualize. Very often I can visualize what I'm writing in terms of the sort of the action sequences or the dialogue.
A movie in your mind, sort of thing, yeah.
Almost, yes. It's not quite as vivid as that, of course, but I've got a good idea about where I want to get from in the morning and get to by the close of day. I mean,
how you plan? You mean, yeah.
So I will start. I'll sort of review the previous day's work up to the point where I know I want to go from there. The only editing I will do at the end of the day's work, if you like, is I will go back and put it into a sentence structure. Because in first draft I let go. I can touch type anyway. I just let go, and I don't worry about structure and sentences, etc., paragraph, and not even spelling or punctuation. Well, at the end of the day, I'll go back and I will put that into some form of basic structure. It's really raw, very, very raw first draft. And then I'll leave that, and then I'll move on to what I think is the next bit, and I'll complete the thing in first draft. And usually that will depends. I mean, the first book, Dark Shadow, in its first iteration, was 186,000 words.
So, how fast are you typing then, Simon?
Well, the most I've done in one day is 10,000 words. I couldn't walk for 2 days after that. I was literally, I hadn't moved for about 8 hours. And that was, my wife was away at that particular point. So there was no interruption. So I just let go. But no, Dark Shadow ended up as, I'd gone completely over the top in terms of, and then you started, and again, this is, 2011. I thought that looked terrific. And I did a quick sort of basic sort of personal edit and started trying to submit it. And this was in the days when you did it, you printed off 3 chapters in a stamped addressed envelope and whatnot, sent it off to an agent. And of course, they were coming back by return of post. And then you've got to start thinking, I'm doing something fundamentally wrong here. Then, of course, I realized that they only want 90,000 words as an absolute maximum. I thought, goodness me, how am I going to spread? So then, you learn the trade, basically. The other thing I found was, having been a senior policeman for so long, that I had a style in writing police reports, and my early readers were coming back with a sheepish grin and saying, "You've got to stop writing it like it's a police report." So you evolved. My writing evolved, my style evolved, but essentially in terms of planning and preparation, I get get an idea about the basic plot line, and I go from there. And that hasn't changed at all.
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult sort of crossing over. I spoke recently with Torn McAllister, and he writes very detailed scientific reports. And for him to switch off and to sort of write fiction is sort of a big stark change for him. Torn McAllister is his pen name because obviously he writes professional reports.
Yeah.
You don't want to doesn't want to complicate the two.
Yeah.
But that must be difficult. It was strange when I told people I'd written a book. They're sort of because I'm involved with lean manufacturing, which is sort of process improvement for manufacturing.
Yeah.
And when I said to people I'd written a book, they were like, "Oh, about lean manufacturing." I was like, "No, sci-fi drama and that sort of thing." So, it's always a big challenge, isn't it? It's always a big challenge. What's your biggest challenge at the moment?
Difficult to say. Well, I suppose getting the copy edits back and getting the third manuscript off to the publishers, and then working on the fourth and fifth books.
Yeah. So, have you got four? Have you got all those in head? Have you?
Oh, they're actually written. They're written.
You are productive, aren't you?
For so long that I've written a series. So, but of course, they're written. They're there. But they need to be polished. So, the third one, Rough Justice, should be out hopefully in the next few months. Yeah. And then I'm contracted for another 2 after that, and I've just written a historical crime novel based in China in the 1930s, and I'm just finishing that in first draft. So I've got something rolling all the time.
Simon, you're very productive, I've got to say.
I try to be. You've got to do something, otherwise. The one thing I can't do, I can't stand gardening. You see, so that's the only alternative to sitting up here and working. If I wasn't up here working, the wife would have me in the garden, and I can't. I couldn't.
Well, I think that's probably my excuse as well. I think I run another channel for a football team, Warsaw, in League 2. So I'm sort of like run the number 1 fan channel for Warsaw. So that keeps me busy. But I think similar to what you said earlier is when you've got other things on your to-do list, it's difficult to concentrate on writing, and that's the problem I have. I sort of have a list of my jobs I need to tick off, and quite often the writing isn't the top of the list. I'll have to get everything else done. Once that's done, then I can focus.
Yeah, you can clear your brain, clear your head, can't you?
Yeah. But now I've got the first draft done of my latest YA novel. And now I'm in editing. That is something that I can sort of jump in and out of because I'm lucky. I've got a different head on going through the editing for that. And I'll be doing my first edit is putting all the extra details in I didn't put in when I was doing the first draft.
Yeah.
But then I think it's the crossover for me to paying for professional editing because I haven't done that. Done that. And,
there's plenty of them out there, I'm sure, because I suspect a lot of them have had to go freelance because the publishing houses aren't employing them anymore. But I think it's an important part of it. You must have a good relationship. I'm lucky. I've worked with this editor for a couple of years now. And she's been involved in certainly my first 3 books, quite in terms of advice and critiquing and whatnot. Yeah. So we've got a good. I've never met her, but we've had a good. We've got a good relationship in that respect. Yeah. I think it's important, and it is absolutely vital. I think if you want to successfully publish your book, that it's got to be edited by someone else. You need another set of eyes to look at it because you become so complete, involved in your plot line and your stories and your characters. And then when someone else comes in and says, "Yeah, you need to perhaps consider this or consider that," they never tell you, but think about this, that, and the other. And if you get a good, clear thought, is very often gives you some new ideas and a much better route for the story to take. It's very useful.
I've got a couple of people that do that. sort of detailed critique, but not sort of line editing and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So the one girl, she will point out small issues, and the other woman's a very experienced. I wouldn't say writer, very experienced in the industry.
Yeah.
And so she's given me some very good, strong feedback and detailed. And it's having the right people around you that'll tell you that it's straight,
yes,
isn't
of course.
it?
Yeah, it is. There's no doubt else.
When I put together a children's book, my wife looked at it and she said, "This is not for like a children's book. This is your detail is sort of completely wrong." So we between us we stripped it all back and made it more sort of child, sort of under 6 friendly.
Yeah.
My initial draft was sort of more sort of targeted at somebody of 12, perhaps, I think.
Right. No, it's
But
difficult. You've got to get it right. You've got to get in that respect. You need to have the language very carefully. I mean, it's a difficult thing to do. It's not easy, is it?
No, it's difficult. Simon, I wish you well, and I'm going to have a look for this Dark Shadow and get myself a copy because it looks good.
Please do.
So, thank you very much. Thanks very much for coming on the show, and we'll catch you again, no doubt. But definitely a rising star, I think.
It's very kind of you to say so. Thank you for inviting me on. It's always nice to talk to other people who have an interest in the area. It's good to meet you.
Thank you. Nice one. Everybody else, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We're live on the podcast as well now, of course. So thanks for that. Subscribe, join the journey, and get some great advice and listening to some good people. Thanks for watching.